Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the fourth meeting of the Faenza Prize talk. Today we will have the chance to meet a new group of artists, both from the category under and over 35, together with Judith Schwartz, president of MoCA Museum of Ceramic Art in New York, very famous for her engagement in ceramic art and with many activities and projects. So thank you, Judith, for being with us and for sharing this experience of the Faenza Prize. Just a remark to our audience to say that if you have any comment or question, please put in on the chat and we will answer you at the end of the meeting. So Judith, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Claudia, and welcome to you wonderful artists who have engaged in this 60-second Faenza Biennale. We are so delighted to have you here and to share your experience and, most importantly, the work that you submitted for the competition. Congratulations to you all, because it was a very stiff competition and you persevered, and we are delighted to see you today. I'm particularly impressed with the range of work and delighted to have both under and over 35 in this discussion. And I'd like to start off then this morning with our first speaker, Darien. Darien, hello, good morning. Tell us where you're living right now and a little bit about your background, and then let's get into showing your presentation of the work.
Good morning. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia right now. I teach at Georgia State University here. And I grew up in a small town of Hibbing, Minnesota, and found clay when I was a sophomore in college and have been using it ever since. And I don't know how deep you want to go into background, but yeah, grad school at Arizona State University, and I've lived in Buffalo and Copenhagen for a little bit as well.
Yeah, I saw that you also were an emerging talent at NCECA.
Yeah, 2012 in Seattle, I think was the one.
That's right. I think that's when I first saw your work. So I'm delighted that you're now in the over 35 category.
Yes.
So let's see
that I am.
Let's see your work.
Sure. So this is the work that's going to be part of the competition. As far as I know, it's been created and it should be on its way in a day or two. It's untitled. Sometimes I often title my pieces more to give it a name than point to more of the content, but sometimes they go untitled as well. The work that I make sort of resides under a conceptual umbrella, so I don't try to point to specific content per individual piece, but have kind of created a system in which the content is about how we integrate technology and sort of form consciousness today. It's a reflection on a current state of the human experience, and a lot to do with how often we're on screens and how often we interrupt our experience. So I've also included a number of process shots. So you could go to the next slide. I look for ways throughout the process that each step can respond to the step that's happened prior. So I reference the body tying, our conscious state to our physicality. They're not separate. So the original form is coil built with reference to the body, but in an abstract way, not trying to mimic it directly. And then the slab components that are put on top are formed in an intuitive way where I sort of roll the slab and fold it over and roll the slab and fold it over. So not to dictate what the slab should look like, but to have the process help guide my decisions as well as having the form below it guide the shape and size that they become. And so I've developed this weird way of hanging the slabs by that's plastic on top of the slab, and then some tape that's stuck to the plastic, and then it's suspended above, which allows me to sort of fight gravity a little bit and create a way that it becomes like a dance. Like my wife is a really good dancer, an avid dancer, and it's made me think about how like a really good dance as a lead isn't telling your partner where to go, but it's guiding them into situations where they can sort of project their best outcome. So that's one thing that I've been thinking about a lot. Other things that I do are like the squares are a big part of my work. So in the bottom left-hand corner there, I'm carving squares. They are both physical and the illusionistic as I slip trail them and paint them later on. And that acts as a transition from the physical to the illusionistic. It also obviously points to Photoshop, the alpha state, or where there's no information, no pixels present. It points to that. And it also talks about sort of a meditative frame of mind. So you can see that they're all hand carved. The wires inserted are like a transfer of information, one point to the other, but there's sort of a break, like a glitch, like the physical representation of a glitch or breaking of information. And you can continue forward. So I observe a lot. So the top piece is a watercolor painting, so on paper. So it's observational from just something mundane. That's just the orange construction barrier that they would put up to block like construction or any place you're not supposed to enter. So like trying to capture commonplace observation, but then take the time to render it very specifically on watercolor. That embeds the memory into my mind as strong as possible, and then scanning it, it turns it into material that becomes digitally painted. So it's in a way it acts as a metaphor for digitally manipulating memory or turning memory into material. And then that's the manipulation below is just repeating the layer over and over again, sort of talking about how we take pictures and then use that picture to remember the experience. But over time, repeating that, you replace the actual experience with looking at a photograph. And so that the end result is a no longer discernible recollection. Also thinking about sort of what it means to make a gestural mark in digital, in the digital space. And the picture on the left is simply the state of a piece when I'm sitting in front of the computer making these manipulations. And then this is a good example of how these images come together on the ceramic surface. There's decisions being made in the computer as well as collage that happens on the actual surface of the piece. So that's kind of a summary of how I work. Yeah, I'm really excited to have the piece on its way to Italy and be in the show.
On the imagery that you're photographing and then digitizing, are those taken from your, are you out in the field taking photographs, or are you getting the images from the internet? Are they yours?
So predominantly out in the field. So originally when the work started, I would go out specifically to take photos. That's morphed into sort of enacting in the experience that, like being part of the experience that I'm commenting on. So I just use my phone now and will be walking with somebody, notice something and say, hey, I need to stop, take this picture. But instead of being like some grand observation, it's just something that's fallen on the ground or whatever. I have in the past used images for specifically when I was doing a residency at Creta, Rome. I did a piece where I mined Google images or Google Earth images from the area that I was going to be a resident in, and use those.
The surfaces are certainly filled with memory and with layering, and I love the layering aspect of what you're doing. What I was also impressed, I'm glad that this first piece is on. I'm very impressed with the pedestal that you arranged for the work itself. And I know that that was also, it reminds me of Miraut's work. You know, Miraut loved to create his own pedestal so that the height of the sculpture would always be at the height that he wanted it to be viewed. So by manipulating and giving us the pedestal, you have already set in motion the height and the whole image of what you want us to take on as a gestalt. And I love that concept. So is the base is clay, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I've tried a few different materials to resolve the sort of pedestal component, because it's an issue, and I want the work also to exist in the space as a whole with the viewer and not be sort of separated via the standard white cube. And
I love that aspect of it. I think it was very smart of you to give us the pedestal exactly at the height and the shape that you wanted.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and I wanted it to have that sort of stretched, kind of almost like it was glitched, like it's referencing classical form, but it sort of glitches over to the piece, which caused some technical issues in the kiln, but they were resolved.
I'm sure. Well, congratulations. That was a wonderful explanation. Thank you so much, Darien.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Our next awardee is Noah. Hello, shalom. You're coming to us from Tel Aviv, are you not?
Yeah, so currently I'm working in Tel Aviv, and specifically this moment I'm in the studio as well. But until a couple of months ago, I've been working in London for 2 years.
I saw your background is at the Royal College.
Yes.
And then you've come back to Tel Aviv, and you're sort of going back and forth.
Exactly.
So the work that you have for the exhibition was part of a thesis show, was it not, at the Royal College?
Yes, so it was my master degree work that I graduated with. And actually in the museum, I will show 2 pieces out of a large collection that is called Facing the Plenty, which I'll be happy to explain now. So the first slide, you'll see the 2 sculptures that I submitted. And in the last slide, you would see the whole project, as those 2 sculptures are part of this landscape. Yes, so these are the 2 sculptures that I'm going to be exhibiting. So banana tree from the left, as you can see, and the bird from the right. And it's part of the project that I called Facing the Plenty, which is kind of an expression of the way that I experiencing my surrounding and my reality, which is facing the plenty. As a ceramist, I see around me and I'm inspired by so many surfaces and forms. So when we talk about surfaces, it's the texture, it's the pattern, it's the color, it's the level of gloss. And of course, when you stretch it on a form, you ended up with endless variety of options. So this whole work is I made in a very playful way. I try to aim a spotlight on everyday physical things that we often overlook. So a big inspiration for this project was street bollards. As you can see, the body of the tree is actually inspired by it. Pier caps, market stalls with goods, so a lot of vegetables and fruits, rubbish as well. So I take this ready-made object that I take from the physical world, and I kind of sample them back in my studio. I mold them, and then I press slabs of clay into these molds. So in this way, I ended up with a variety of textures and forms in the clay. And then I reattach them to create these volumes that compose this new dreamlike environment through my filter. So I also very interested in the idea of examine network of association that created around objects and found objects. So part of my process is actually collecting items that I find interested in. So you can see the pebble stones, and the bird actually is made from different shapes. So the base of it is actually a shell form, and there's cauliflower texture and lemon, and of course the bananas. And together they're all like kind of merge into this new narrative that I'm composing. The aesthetic that is in the core of my practice for many years now is based on this urban imagery. I've been living through cities all of my life. I was born in Jerusalem. I've been living in big cities as Copenhagen and London and Tel Aviv as well. And the cement and the asphalt road are all around me all the time. So it really echoes strong in my works. And so this is kind of this one power that I identified that is very solid and stable. But then on the other side, I kind of notice this very dynamic energy of things that are transient and colorful and changing with the seasons, things that have to do with the plants and living. So it's this contrast between these energies, but then they also complete each other. So the whole project is composed from many different elements, and I was very much interested in how one specific element, if you break it down, you can always find how complicated it is. But then when you zoom out, you can always see that it's part of this larger relationship, and it always has interaction with other things. So it creates even a bigger image. So I try to make this very massive and loaded landscape with details when it comes to the textures and the colors and the general image of this whole thing. And I think in this way, it's also kind of removes the concept of hierarchy between things. There is no accumulation that is important than an object, or an object that is important than accumulation. Yeah, so I was trying to get, I come originally from a background of pottery, and I used to work with very traditional materials. And in this project, I really tried to push myself to a different direction. So I was going back into my roots. I started working in clay when I was very, very young, and I was doing a lot of hand build. So I think this project was in a very playful way. I started to kind of creating this new reality that I fantasize, and yeah, and also when it comes to the use of color, I wanted to bring more graphical qualities into it. So there's a various of way that I applied the colors on this project. So it's spray guns and brush strokes and yeah, and dips, and just a big party to celebrate, you know, my love to this world and the field.
Well, Noah, the work is incredibly exuberant. And what I love about any artist that brings your world into my world is that you open up new realities for me. And what is so impressive about this work, as seen in relationship to each other, is that I am now noticing things in your environment, your landscape, and knowing now that you live both in Israel, which is quite tropical, and then going back to London, which is quite urban, you know, that you're bringing a kind of a new awareness of your environment, and you're making it my reality as well. Mm-hmm. I've not seen any banana trees in Israel. I guess there are bananas.
No, there aren't. It's the bananas from the market stools. That's it.
But I'm very willing and very open to the perception that you're giving us of your environment, and of course the the title Facing the Plenty, the exuberance and the richness of what you're displaying is really quite evident. And I feel very happy when I look at your work. And I think that's perhaps something that you want to share with us. Thank you so much, Noah. Very lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Pleasure. Our next invite and awardee is Dong Lin. And she is coming to us from Beijing, are you not?
Yes.
This is such an international biennale, and that's what I love about it. And so we're going on the opposite side of the world to Beijing. Good evening, Dong Lin.
Good evening.
We're very happy to have you. And your training is quite remarkable too, as so many Chinese in ceramics have such impeccable training and background. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into this very magnificent work of yours.
Okay. Hello. My name is Dong Lin, come from China. I graduated from Center of Fine Arts and have received a doctorate in fine arts. Now I'm a lecturer at Beijing United University, also professional artist. It is an honor to participate in the 62 NE Faenza ceramic art. So let me introduce my work. I choose to use ceramic as my main art creation language. I'm addicted to use my hand direct on clay. In creative consciousness, I first break through the natural thing, abandon the traditional crash massive of ceramic materials, and boldly try to use ceramic as a poor molding material. I like the plastic orange of the sculpture itself. I like the temperature and feel of the clay I have. I have been collecting works related to ancient Chinese wines, legends, and the traditional Chinese patterns. This type of work is also
Dong Lin, excuse me one moment. Dong Lin?
Yeah, yes.
Would you speak a little slower, because I think the time lag is a little bad here. If you would speak a little slower, we'd be better to understand you.
Okay. This type of work is also a reinterpretation of traditional Chinese literature and images, and use some new ceramic materials and techniques to create contemporary ceramic art. The work named Looking Forward to Return. It was created based on the story of 9 sons, mountain gods in Schwartz. It describes the story of several mountain gods who wait for her sweetheart to arrive. The poem Looking Forward to Return express the emotional connection between the protagonist and the missing object in the poem. I hope to portray the unique flowers and plants, as well as space to present an artistic conception of unity of man and God, allowing people to enjoy the same pleasure and sky to live. I hope to integrate the protagonist mountain ghost into a broader and richer living space, correcting an ethic of previous generations. I chose color porcelain as the material for this work. I mixed the color myself, and the shapes of flowers, plants, eggs, and keys were all made by my hand. This is consistent with my previous corrective techniques. The use of animals' skins and fur further enriched the atmosphere of the work, and the selection of this material is also more in line with the materials and the wide story atmosphere of mountain ghosts. Next picture. Yes, I introduced this work, whose name is called Chernichovsky, a sculpture in mountain forest. This work is 8 meters long. The inspiration for the correction of the work comes from the Dunhuang frieze course in China. I use traditional colors in the frieze course and observed the essence of traditional religious paintings with shapes of little arhat, pony, deer, and so on. I put in the spring happiness limb of landscapes, flowers, and plants, and strive to pursue a happy and comfortable spiritual limb with a high degree of freedom. The direction of artistic conception of the picture and the visual cut and the profound atmosphere. Next picture. Hello.
Our connection seems not so strong, and some of the words that you've been saying have been cut off. So what I
next picture, I have another work to show. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, next picture. Yes, and next one is the last work. Next one.
Oh.
Next. Yes.
My goodness.
Yes. This work is called Naohai, which is based on the mythological story in traditional Ming Dynasty Chinese novel《封神演义》. Is depicts the sense of the recognized little hero Naja facing against the dragon and water based on the sea. He is fearless of power and strive bravely. I used a variety of materials in this work, include ceramics, clay, colored glass, and so on. I used the work consists of more than 2 individuals with a height of 3 meters and a width of 2 meters. Okay, these are my works introduced. Thank you.
Your work is very, very impressive. You obviously spend every minute of waking hour constructing the pieces that you do. It must have taken you months and months to construct the work that you submitted for the exhibition. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I think of you more as an installation artist because obviously there's so many component parts to it, and there's such a fantasy and so many little details, like the inclusion of the fur, and it has to be just in the right place for your animals and for your people. How many hours does it take you to construct this piece?
Maybe 3 months.
3 months, right?
Yes.
And it took you 3 months to make it, or 3 months? How long does it take you to put it together when you go to display it?
Put them together at 3 months. Both okay. Maybe 3 months. I make it directly. It's very fast. I make it by my hand.
Right.
It's very fast. Yes.
And the scale of it is quite a large piece. And so that it seems like you could continue on and on and on. You could fill a whole room with your.
Yes. I want to make a longer one or a biggest one. Yes, I like it.
So all the flowers, everything, all the little pieces are all clay. There's no other material in there at all.
Both are clay. Yes, clay.
Amazing, just amazing. Well, it's a very, very impressive work, and together, collectively, it brings an environment of the Chinese landscape and your historical memory of the various dynasties and how you bring it all together into this work is really quite commendable. So we thank you very much and congratulations on your being part of the exhibition.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, I'd like to welcome Frank Lewis from Germany.
Yeah, hello. Is the connection okay? Can you hear me?
Yes, wonderful.
Very good. Thank you very much for giving me the chance to speak about my work here. Should I introduce myself a little?
I would love to have you tell us a little bit about yourself. This is not your first Faenza competition. You have been in our competition before. And so each time you seem to reinvent yourself with new materials and new ideas. So we're really delighted to have you back, and especially with this wonderful work. But give us a little background about yourself.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's the 4th time I'm in the exhibition, but yeah, okay. Yeah, and it's true that my work changed a lot. I do ceramics or do art since more than 30 years now, and I must admit I'm quite easily bored about if I repeat myself. So I'm always looking for new things to explore, and that's why my work is changing constantly. There have also been some periods when I didn't use ceramic at all, because I had the feeling that I was repeating myself. And so but right now I really love to work with the ceramic because I love this petrification process.
Right.
I try to depict things which do not really have a certain form, for example, clouds or water or also these small dust bunnies. And now in the exhibition are these gas flames, which we all know. We all know that, for example, we love to look at the form of clouds, but in fact, they don't really have a real form. It's if you want to depict them or transform them into a solid material like clay, it's more an abstraction of a form of a cloud than it's the real cloud. And this process is very interesting for me. And that's why I tried this out in the recent years. And I'm working at an art university in Austria, which is the only place in Austria and one of the very few places in the German-speaking countries where you can study ceramics. but our department is embedded into a fine art department, which means that we are talking about sculpture first, and then there is a choice for material, which means that you only use ceramics when the concept makes it necessary. And this is one very important thing for our department. And right now there are ceramics are quite famous, so there are a lot of students working in our workshops to make their experience with a ceramic material.
Are you showing us any other slides of the clouds? Or
Yeah, there are some. So, but maybe I talked too much. That's why it was removed. Yeah, these are, for example, the clouds
Right.
I made, and it was they also have an ironic aspect because they are fixed on the wall with the safety belts from aeroplanes. So there is also this idea that you can open them easily and then they might fly away. And the work I wanted to show, or I'm glad that I can show it in the competition in summer, is these gas flames. That it was the first picture, and this was also a thing which this picture of gas flames has been that omnipresent since the Russian attacked the Ukraine, because in Europe we had a very big crisis about, we were not sure whether we will have enough gas to which we are depending on. So in every newspaper, in every television news, there was always the picture of this gas flame, and that made me curious. How could I make a sculpture out of it? Because flame is also something which, of course, has a form, but it took me quite a long time to explore what kind of surface I can use for it. And then, of course, the gas flame is a very interesting object, or gas, because at the moment we are. The news was full of the question whether we will have enough gas, whether it will flow undisturbed to Europe to save our standard of life. And on the other hand side, we know that this is one of the materials which is responsible for climate change. So in fact, we should get rid of the use of gas as soon as possible. And these two elements I try to combine in this work. So there are these fire blankets which evoke a little the idea that you should really the fire will be stopped as soon as possible.
What I'm really impressed about this work is that when I look at a gas flame, it is sort of a bluish white, and you seem to have captured this in the porcelain so beautifully that I really feel like it is a gas flame. Even though it's not red hot, it feels like gas. And you have somehow visually have been able to capture the feeling of gas coming through a burner and onto the surface. And I love that you added the cloth, which is the real fire cloth, right? Is the found object that you've added on, which sort of captures the element of putting out the flame, or, that little bit of irony about it, So it's the burners themselves and the fantasy of the gas is really quite wonderful. I am very impressed with the range of your work when I looked at your website to see how many different materials you work in. And I think it's quite true that when you do want to convey meaning, you have to choose the right material that would do that for you. And so in the next slide, if you don't mind going back to the clouds, adding these heavy seatbelts, capturing, sort of embracing the clouds, is really quite a juxtaposition. And the clouds look so amorphous. But, I noticed that you also do a work that with the same kind of shape called Harvest. Are you showing that work as well? Or are these the only two? Oh, good, good. So here again is the mixed media that you have talked about. Tell us a little bit about this piece as well.
Yeah, it was in former times I didn't use glazes at all because I had the feeling this is an addition to the form which doesn't really fit in most cases. But then I recognized that in the ceramic, the shops where you can buy the material, there is an enormous variety of very kitschy glazes, mostly used in the hobby, for the hobby ceramic. And then I started to love them because they are so colorful and do they run and do crazy, combine all colors you can imagine. And then I made these objects which look a little flashy and the pedestal is not a normal pedestal. It's a fence which is referring to this. You say good fences make good neighbors. And this is the idea of this piece, yes. And the harvest piece, I think there is no more picture. It's just straw, which also was an attempt to show this material, which is, of course, not a hard material as ceramic is.
Well, I do really applaud your ability to work with materials that bring out the essence of the material that supports your ideas. And that, I think, is the work of a true artist, that willing to explore materials in a way that really convey meaning to us all. And congratulations on this work. It was quite inspirational, and I really loved the aspect of sustainability and bringing our attention to gas in a fresh way. Thank you so much, Frank.
Yes, thank you.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you. Well, this is a lot to absorb, but now we're going to move on. We have now to welcome Yves Malfliet.
Yes, good afternoon, morning for you.
Wonderful to see you again.
Yes.
Congratulations. I've met you before many years ago in
Westerwald Museum.
Westerwald Museum, yes. Loved your work then. And this work now is entirely different. You too are constantly reinventing yourself in the works and the materials that you choose as well. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Yves.
Yes, so I did my studies in Antwerp, Belgium, and I do traditional ceramic education, so on the Royal Academy, and I got also on the Erasmus project in Spain. But the moment that was stopping with my studies, then I didn't make ceramics anymore. And it have been in 2003, 2004 that I have refined again the clay. And I was becoming so quiet with it, and I was using the clay, and by that way I say I will continue with clay, and by that way I'm still busy with clay and I love it. That's it at the end. So easy.
Wonderful. Well, let's get into the work.
Yes. So the title.
Us about the title first, because
the title, yes. When we translated Paradiso di Fango Eclettico, when we translate it, it's Paradise of Eclectic Mud. So you see three words: paradise, eclectic, and mud. Paradise is a little bit the way that I work. When I'm working in my studio, it is a pleasure. I'm creating without limits, and also try to put all the restrictions from the craft after me. That's it. Then the eclectic, when I'm working, the history that I'm telling, it's very narrative, and so all the combinations that I do, it's very eclectic. And the mud in the work refers more to the way that I'm working. So what I do is I mixing all kind of clays together, even porcelain, and I put water over it. I let it a few days, till it's really become mud. And that mud I put in kind of big buckets, and then I let it dry till I can work on it. But by that way, I'm creating very massive works. It's also a little bit contradiction, because in the school I always have learned you have to work very thin with your material. So I wanted to change it. I wanted to work massive, and also to put it, that massive works, in the kiln, and then to wait what gonna happens. What gonna happens with that big massive blocks of clay. And so, of course, I see the natural cracks that it made in the oven, in the kiln, and that's part of the work. And maybe something around the idea of the work. So on the wooden plank, you see three, I call it geological pieces. It's like I've cut out pieces of the earth. And on that is appearing the human being. And there are three things of the human being that I've isolated. In the first work, you see that he's create houses. He likes to build. That's the first with the house on it. The second is that he likes to socialize. And in the second, you see the human being with his buildings, with other animals and all together, the life. And in the third, you see also it's something typical for the human being, that he tried to create religions. That are three elements that was found very important with the human being. But sometimes, like we see the human being, it's nice things, but also it can be auto-destructive. And all the broken ceramic that you see on the ground symbolize that auto-destruction of the human being. But of course, this is drama, but I bring this drama by a kind of happy way, because I'm using happy colors. So that is a kind of contradiction, because on the wall, you see also three wall pieces, and that symbolize more a kind of happy apocalypse, a final end, that you can compare with the Gotterdammerung from Wagner, for example. That is also a final end. And when you see my work, I like to show it also like a piece of theater, like a piece of opera at the end. It's narrative or pieces to what you have to look. And also, I have a kind of idea with my works, but I love also that other people with other culture, other way of thinking, can consume this work by their way. And by that way, all the histories together of everybody makes the work at the end more rich. Yeah, here you see the part with the religion. Then I think on the next slide, you see the building. That's the first. And in the middle, you have then the human being who like to socialize. I've put also a few details after. Yes, so to socialize. That's it. That's a little bit about the idea of the work. But in all that symbols and that apocalypse that I say, it's also something thematic that you see with the Flemish primitives also. And it's something that I like very much. For example, I see the work of Hieronymus Bos in Prado in Madrid, where I can stay hours before just to look to the history, to the narrative point from the work. But yeah, I am from Flanders, I'm Belgian, and so then I'm laughing and I say, yeah, look, see my work, I'm the last of the Flemish primitives.
Well, Yves, I have to say that your narrative of bringing what you call the socialization, the building and religion is certainly a personal expression of
Yes.
how you perceive life. And again, you're sharing with us the Flemish background, but it also is more than that for me, because the narrative is so expressive and so personal, but it's so clay-like. It's almost luscious. I want to eat up some of those gorgeous glazes.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And
Gonna be a little bit hard for the teeth, but
there's a voluptuous quality to the way that you have presented this. It's almost over the top. It is full of life and full of energy, and the compression way in which you describe making it in this bucket is quite amazing, you know, because normally you wouldn't make it this thick. This is, you know, thick, layered, pushed in clay, right? And
yes, and wait till it arrives in the museum. They're gonna have their work to put it on the socle or the wooden plank, because it's really 25 kilos for one piece.
I was wondering, I said, this must be
Yes.
incredibly heavy. We're going to
Really
need
heavy.
a crane to pick it up. But I must say the layered, you know, the aspect of it being layered, almost like the earth, the core of the earth.
Yes, it's carving, yeah. Yes.
So the narrative is quite strong and really quite beautiful. Well, congratulations, Yves. The work, you always continue to surprise me with your inventiveness. And I've followed your work over many years, and I do find your work to be quite informative and so full of clay.
Full of clay, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure. Yeah. Our final speaker, welcome to this wonderful artist, Garrett Masterson, living right here in America. You're one of the few Americans in the exhibition, so we're really delighted. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You have a very interesting background, and what I do love about your work, about how formal it is. You know, you really get into the formal aspects of working with clay. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Garrett Masterson from Central California. I've been working in clay most of my life. I began undergraduate school as a painting instructor. I mean, as a painting major, and when I stepped foot into the ceramics classroom, I never left. I mean, we were there all day and all night working with clay. I sort of found my love and my compulsion. There's something magical about handling clay, and I guess the affinity for me is object, you know, constructing an object. And actually, the wonderful thing about a pottery background is to think about the interior space, and I think that informs all of my work sculpturally that I've done since before graduate school, and obviously since graduate school, is sculptural work that's about a volume, an interior space pressing out against the surface of the piece. It's a great honor to be a part of this exhibition and to participate with these other artists in this talk. So thank you.
Let's see some of the work now, the work that you submitted. Yes, it's quite a powerful piece.
Thank you very much. This piece, Xenolith, is a xenolith in geologic terms is the inclusion of some rock material in a different rock material. It could be a split in a igneous rock that sediments settle, and then there's this layer of sedimentary rock embedded in the igneous rock, or in reverse, it could be that there are sediments that have cracked, and then a volcanic action, the magma would fill up an area in the sedimentary rock and leave this. And to me, that's kind of a metaphor. My process is, when I work with clay, it's very intuitive and it's also evolutionary. And by that, I mean, I don't think of a form and then create it. I don't think of a concept and then create it, as some of the artists that we've looked at here have done that, and then others also work intuitively. To me, the clay informs me about where it's going, and each piece informs the next piece. So I see this probably since graduate school. I see this flow of my work from one piece to the next. This is me working on a sculpture in Shigaraki. I was guest artist in the Toge no Mori, which is the Shigaraki Cultural Park. And I wanted to make, they have a very large kiln, much larger than I have ever been able to work with. So I measured the interior of the kiln and I made the piece exactly high enough to slide inside the kiln. Almost 7.5 feet tall after firing.
Amazing.
And this kind of shows my technique of building these torn slabs of clay, and mostly working from the inside, pushing out with a little minimal paddling so that I can have some control over the form, but mostly allowing the surface of the clay to take on a kind of natural texture, and the interiors is where the form, the actual volume of the form is generated. Next slide shows the finished piece that's now in the cultural park. It was included in their sculpture garden, which is actually an entire park filled with sculpture from artists all around the world. So it's a great honor to have this piece there. It's called Homage to Yosemite because I currently live in Central California and not too far from Yosemite. Anytime visitors come, we take them to Yosemite, and there is one of the monuments in Yosemite is Half Dome, and this sort of has a profile of Half Dome, so that's why it's titled that. And in fact, on Half Dome, there are other chunks of rock sitting on top of Half Dome. I began as a figurative artist out of graduate school, and probably in my website you would see more figurative work, but going to Shigaraki in 2017 sort of launched the figurative work had become more and more abstract, and this pushed the abstraction into this idea of these sort of monolithic forms with a boulder sitting on top of them. Next slide is a variation after Shigaraki. I did other pieces that were like that, and but I wanted to show this because I also am interested in shearing the form. This contrast between natural material, natural monolithic rock, and then humans shaping that monolithic rock into some other kind of form. Or even the way that Half Dome, it's Half Dome because half of that massive batholith broke away. And so you see this kind of broken off surface, in this case, segmented surface, which reveals a little of the contour in the sliced area. And then of course, this little cutout ledge with a boulder teetering on it precariously. Is it going to fall off? But it feels very calm and stable. So my work is, I love contrast. So my work is typically a lot of contrast, like this rock that's going to fall off. I don't know what else.
Good.
So this is a close-up of xenolith that will be in the show this summer in Faenza.
Wonderful.
And the idea of that inclusion, that other rock inclusion being gold, in some ways makes reference to the gold rush in California or gold found in other places. But to me, it's also a metaphor of something very valuable that's included or incorporated into something that's more commonplace. In a sense, a foreign material or a foreigner. So I would hope that it may not be immediately recognizable, but to me, it's something valuable that's discovered in something common.
Well, I have to say that your pottery background is evident in the work because you really explore the tactile nature of clay. The piece right away conjures up wanting to touch it and feel the textures. And I love seeing that process shot of that large piece that you did in Shigaraki, because it's a real masterful way of handling the clay. And you truly are a master at being able to get this kind of wonderful feeling. I particularly like the way that you tear the clay and add these formed pieces, building up the form layer by layer in a slow process of evolution. I must say also that the juxtaposition of that one little element against the large mass is a very sweet kind of coda, the way you see in a poem of that little ending that really triggers a new awareness. And this gold stripe for me really clinched this work for me. I didn't realize that is it just a painted surface, or is it actually layered in as a separate, like a brick?
It's a gold luster that was applied as a second or third firing. There might have been 3 firings involved, and it's a low fire gold luster that was applied. I was very pleased that it stayed matte. Sometimes gold lusters can get glossy, and this needed to have the same character and quality. In fact, it was actually, the whole thing was made whole and then sliced through, so that
that's what I felt. Yes.
Yeah.
The whole thing was sliced through, so it really looked like it was another piece layered on top, the way you did the dome in the Yosemite park. I mean, it's a wonderful juxtaposition. There's a little bit of humor in this as well, which is just delightful. Well, thank you, Garrett. Just wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to, I know we're really out of time right now, but I'd really like to thank all of the artists. Let's see if we see everybody back again. Claudia, I think this was a wonderful selection and a wonderful grouping of artists here at today's performance. Everyone had just such a different way of approaching the material, from installation to large scale, small scale, and you've all done a marvelous job. And I thank you for inviting me to be a juror and to be a host today for you all.
So thank you, Judith, and thank you, the artists, for sharing with us their experiences. We talk about memory, irony, materiality, and manipulation of images. So it was fantastic to collect all of these great experiences. So we don't have any question from the public, so I will thank you all for staying with us. And of course, you can see again this talk online on our web YouTube web channel. And I'm inviting you to next week when we will meet another group of artists, the 11th of April, Tuesday, with the Moscow Memory Collective, Liza Riddle, Sibyl Ritter, Fausto Salvi, Davide Ronco, and Vukicevic Velimir. So another group, international, from all over the world, and it is a pleasure. Stay with us and be tuned. So thank you all, and good evening, or have a good day. It depends. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.